that's a weak point.
It is a weak point.
But this is not subjected to the same stress that a tree in nature would receive.
Okay.
So I'm all about studying the natural example, but bonsai is a different thing. And certain recognizable truths to the way trees grow in nature can be altered when we're micromanaging them. That's what we're doing. When we grow a plant in a pot, a bonsai tree in a pot, we're micromanaging. And I can micromanage this to prevent what you're describing from happening.
Okay.
Can you rotate it so we can see it?
Yeah, he's talking about this right here. Do you know why when people prune fruit trees, they prune to encourage horizontal branching? Mm-hmm. Structurally, the way a tree is put together, the limbs that stretch out in an open, almost 90-degree angle are the strongest. The weakest crotches are those that are at a tight angle, a closed angle. And often what happens, you get something called included bark, where you have actually a seam where it's bark facing bark. It's not knitted together. There's actually a fissure there, and that could be the case right here, right? You could have some included bark in there, and that's a weak crotch. And then when stress is put on this, snow load or whatever, it can break off. Yes. So, my hat's off to you for recognizing a structural flaw. I'm not concerned about it for the reasons that I gave.
Yeah, otherwise you could open it up too and make it more interesting, and then it would heal and make
Yeah.
it stronger.
Yeah, if I was inclined to take this off, John, then I would reopen this, which is mostly closed, and I would extend the damage through that and down the trunk to make a big gaping
Oh
cavity.
yeah, I've done that.
Yeah. So that's an option, but in this case, I'd like the other option better. I'd like to use this branch.
Okay.
I do have to make it conclude. I'm not prepared to have it run out this far, right? So let's say, I could do that, and I looked at this and thought, oh, that would be really dramatic, right? Is to have this then go all the way out like this. This is too big. So you could have this one and this. I like the one above it better. Right? So you could do that, and that would be really dramatic. I like that. I'm looking at it now and thinking, yeah, it looks pretty cool. I don't know. Let's leave that decision for now. What I was thinking was that I'd go out this one instead. And if I were to do that, I would still be inclined to take this off, and I would be inclined to take that off, right? To put together something on that order. I was thinking of it without that, right? Without the part that my hand's covering and just using this. But this is kind of interesting. And it illustrates exactly what would happen in nature if such a thing occurred. Well, how would that occur? Well, because the tree actually used to be up here. And damage broke it down to the point where most of the crown is removed. And then this, which used to be underneath the canopy and had to extend way out to get light, now suddenly has access to light. What happens? Just what I described before. Something that was in an advantageous position starts growing upward. Oh, you can see this. Believe me, if you look for it, you'll see branches that extend out and have little trees growing off of them. Why? Because light was made available in a place where it initially wasn't. And the tree responded by sending upward growth. That tried and true, never-erring principle of trees. They grow to the light. And if you give it the opportunity, it will produce exactly a structure like this. I'm going to leave that right now for, one, for consideration, and two, because I know it really bothers some people to see that there. I have two things, like two salesmen working the same end of the block. Somebody's got to go. I have to evaluate. Which is better? Do I want to go with this younger one, which is less substantial but more movable? At this point, we can manipulate this, right? It's very flexible. We can put it where we want. Or I could go with this, which is more substantial but hardly flexible at all. When you get a short, stout section like that, it's very difficult to make that change. Anybody have an idea about that?
At least it's not two-dimensional if it comes out from the other one.
if it comes out of here. Yeah, I agree with you. I like,
Doesn't look good from this angle.
it doesn't look good from which
That
angle?
lower.
The lower one
yeah,
doesn't,
from-
where it comes out there doesn't
Right.
look necessarily so good. Well, you know, I know where you're coming from, and agree often enough, but not, I mean, this is a tree that has multiple unusual features.
Oh, yeah.
And so to have one more would just be in keeping, you know? But that doesn't mean we have to go that way. We have an alternative, you know? So I have to look at it a moment and judge what serves our purposes. And I'm going to, you know, just to remain contrary, I'm going to keep the one that nobody likes. We'll use this instead. I like that it has this. And you'll notice, and for years and years I did it this way because I was taught this way. All right, so I want to cut back to something, right? I'm going to reduce this branch and build some movement and taper into it. Cut to something downward facing. That would be my knee-jerk response. Cut to something downward facing. But now I see great value in cutting to something upward facing and then retraining that. Why? So you get that effect that I see time and again when I look at old trees in nature. That thing that tells you very clearly it was stopped from going the way that it wanted to go, it regenerated, and tried and true, it's going toward the sun. The lower one doesn't make sense in that context. The upper one does. And we bend it over like this. And that gives us what we want. All right, so that's the character of this tree. Now, some of these things are too long as they are. And so we're going to cut them back. All right, this, I like, you know, you like options. It's very good to have multiple things that you can pick and choose from. We try to promote that, you know. Certainly people who grow pre-bonsai recognize the value of that. Sell the customer a tree that offers multiple opportunities. Not something that, hey, if you do snip, 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 you'll have your bonsai tree. But something that gives them choices. Do I want A, B, C, or D? And then they have the ability to invest some of their own way of thinking and seeing into what they design. Right? Yeah. Now about this over here. Well, one, that's too long. And two, that's too long. I don't want to do a whole lot of wiring. I brought some wire with me, and it'll be necessary, but not too much. And this is too long.
Yeah. Now.
Okay, so now I'm looking for growth out of here or out of here. This is very weak, but you know, you might look at it and say, well, you got to protect that, you got to hold on to that. You don't. There are nodes there, there are multiple buds. There was one here, right, where was it? I guess it was right here or here. One of these had a branch. I thought, well, that would be useful, that would be good. But I broke it in digging the plant up. It was very flimsy. I think it was right here. And it broke. Well, not to worry. The way that swells like that, there are multiple buds in there. Other stuff will pop from that same place, almost certainly. Same with like here. This happened many times. It's grown, but I've not wanted more there, so I always cut it off. But you can see that there have been multiple things that pop from that one area. This is how it tends to go. The growth, you know, look how many times it's popped right in this area. New growth I'm talking about when I say pop new buds. Right here and right here, but never in between them. For whatever reason, this area right here isn't inclined to produce buds. These two areas are.
Is there scar tissue there?
Yeah, there's scar tissue built in there, and there's also, you know,
don't come out?
there's more buds. No, there's no scar tissue here.
Oh, really?
Nothing's ever grown there except bark. All right. Yes, please.
You're planning on this one facing you to become the apex, right?
This,
Yes.
not necessarily by itself, but this and this will work together to form a crown.
Sort of rounded crown.
Yeah,
More-
parts of this.
Could be, look more nature in the wood.
Why don't you take off the top of that centerpiece in there, big piece.
This.
Yeah. right in
Yeah,
there.
I probably will, Bob, but I'm not certain yet. We might want to hold on to some of that for dead wood. So rather than chop it off now and not have that option, I'm going to wait. There's some value in postponing decision-making until you have to make a decision. I know that's a bad thing in the way that some people look at it, but there's value in it, you know, to wait.
You gonna
Yes,
shorten that top up there any?
potentially, yes. I'm not sure yet what
That,
is going to get shortened. You don't like that because it's broken, right? Yeah, we can get rid of that. And all that, I'm not certain, except that in allowing this to remain, I'll send a lot of strength through this. And this is rather small for what I'd like it to be right now. Mr. Lanahan, Dr. Lanahan?
Back here, just cut that top part off.
Yes. What are you looking at?
Well, you gotta turn it sideways.
Yes. I know what you're talking about, but what are you looking at?
Looking at that being your apex out there.
No.
No. We're talking about that being the apex. Back here where it looks thicker going up, if you, bring it down a little bit, about 6 inches down. I'm just saying, and it's gonna keep on budding out, and you're gonna have, break back all the way up that branch.
All the way up here.
No, not that one.
All the way up here.
That'll be gone.
I don't know what you're looking at.
Neither does he.
I don't need help being unusual. And that's not your job. Your job is to help people be usual. You get unusual
I'm
people
just failing at it.
and try to make them usual. Okay. That's where I want that to be for now. Agree, this is distracting, so we'll take it off. But I want this to remain. Obviously, I'm not going to use all of that.
Right.
But I want there to be strength here. And when it gets to an appropriate diameter here, then I can cut it back. And I will. This part I'm waiting on. It's absolutely going to be reduced at the very least, if not removed. So if this is causing you consternation, let go of it. It's not a problem. It won't be there ultimately.
How much would you cut off of that if, in your wildest dreams, on that branch?
This one here?
No, that trunk coming straight up.
How much would I cut off?
Of that whole trunk coming up, in your wildest dreams.
I would do no more than that.
Than that.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what happens very often is somebody wants to cut back like this and they'll get real close in that. It's not a good idea. The tree has a better chance. If your goal is to promote a callus to cover that wound, then you're better off leaving a little bit above the joint here, the branch collar, a little bit above that. And then as this grows, it'll fill in that space and it'll make a much better transition ultimately. Often when people do that, it's too invasive and they damage the plant's ability to produce the callus material in that area. And so you'll get an imperfectly formed callus. Instead of being a donut, it'll be a donut with a big hole bitten out of it, right? Up at the top where you were too invasive with your cut. All right, we're going to shift over to the roots for right now. What kind of time are we looking at?
Arthur,
Yes, please.
why are you leaving that little bitty branch way down at the bottom?
Yeah.
Just because it's so insignificant, I haven't focused on it. Is it bothering you? It's not? Okay, we'll take it off. It's gone.
You got another one right next to
Yeah. Is that bothering you?
No.
Okay, stop. Yeah, those are not necessary, but they don't matter either, you know. It took less than a second to snip them off. When we do such things, it's to your advantage to try to think in macro terms. Look at the larger overall picture and don't be so distracted by details. Details come later in the process. If you're fine-tuning things at this stage, you're off the track. Because at this stage, we're roughing out. We're just building the most elemental structure off of which the tree will actually eventually emerge.
You build in the future. You see in the future.
Yes, if I were running for office, that would be my slogan, building the future.
So when you cut this back every year, you basically are cutting
A
it
great
something
future.
like this. Let it go wild, cut back some more.
Yes, when I'm growing it in the ground, but at that point I'm thinking in even larger terms. So a lot of what I've done here as detail I wouldn't do because it's in the ground. And one thing we know in the ground is it's going to explode in new growth, especially if you're leaving the roots intact, which is what I normally do. I don't root prune it in the ground. And so the next year's growth after cutting back is explosive. It's got all that stored energy down in the roots in the springtime. I've seen shoots this long from just 1 year growth, right? Growing off of those strong roots. And so I don't try to manage it too much. Say this didn't come out of the ground this spring and I was going and looking at it and just doing my cutback to set up the next year's growth, I would have cut right here, recognizing that this junction right here is already to a point of ugliness where I would not care to use it. So I would just eliminate it because there's no use in further growing it if I know that I don't want it. And I would just let the energy go this way instead. Stop the energy from going out this track. What does it do? It redeploys itself that way. Yes, redistribution of energy. That's what bonsai largely comes down to. That's what pruning comes down to. You're helping the tree determine where it's going to send its energy. If this isn't here anymore, the tree can't send energy to it. It has to go somewhere else. So it goes out this way. Yeah, I like that. Very interesting. Unusual. It's interesting because you don't see it very often. Not in bonsai anyway. And so that's okay. Although it's the very thing that invites abuse. Okay, let's look at the roots. So this is running on at length. We got a late start today because Rob got me here late and then everybody was enjoying social time, which is fine. That's an important part of the meeting is social time. But it meant that we got off to a late start. But I understand, well, Peggy would not let it go without there being something to eat, right? Of course. Some people observe protocol, even when others find it dispensable. So, lunch isn't a big deal because there isn't much. Those of you who are used to the expansive spread, not today, sorry. We will take a break for lunch, but forgive me for running past 12, right? It's 12 o'clock, we got to eat. All right, let's take this out. All right, let me show you what I found. Let me show you what I found when I went and dug this up. And it's not at all unusual to find this. The tree had produced a multi-tiered root structure. So you had these roots, which provide the nice flaring display at the base of the tree that we like so well in bonsai. But then, coming out from underneath was another set of roots, kind of like a lower level of roots. And typically what I would do is get rid of them because we're going ultimately into a shallow container, right?
You got this battery.